Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am Darcy D, your virtual voice coach, and today we're diving into one of the most misunderstood but most essential skills for singers, pitch accuracy. Now, before you think, I just can't sing in tune, I want you to pause and breathe. Singing in tune isn't just about having natural talent. It's about building muscle memory, coordination, and awareness. And with the right training, this can be developed. This must be developed. Today's session will help you understand what pitch is and how it functions as it pertains to the voice, why singers sometimes go sharp or flat, and we'll even explain what that is, and the tools that you can use to improve your pitch accuracy. And most importantly, how to train your voice to get those right notes consistently. So, before we begin, as usual, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat and we will get to them, I'm sure. It's going to cover a lot of what you need to know. There is quite a bit of science behind pitch and pitch accuracy as it pertains to the voice, but we're just gonna cut to the chase and you'll have a better understanding of it, hopefully, and maybe you already know all of this and you can teach me a few things. Always looking forward to that. So the definition of pitch is a noun, the quality of sound governed by the rate of vibrations producing it. The quality of a sound governed by the rate of vibrations producing it. The degree of highness or lowness of a tone. So for singers, low notes are created when most of the vibrating mass of the vocal cords is used. When the mental demand for higher pitch is called upon, the vocal cords in theory should become smaller and longer, producing higher pitch. So you'll know by going into the module how the voice works in the app that when we're in chest voice or speech level where we speak, the size and shape of the vocal cords is using most of that vibrating mass to produce lower pitches, and that the vibrating mass of the vocal cords vibrates rather slowly. So that produces lower tones. As we sing higher, the vocal cords converge, meaning the amount of vocal cords we use is actually lessened, and the vocal cords get seemingly longer and more natural tension, vibrating at a higher rate, which produces higher pitch. Now, pitch and frequency are closely related, but not identical concepts. So frequency is a physical property of sound waves, specifically the number of repetitions of a wave pattern per second, and we measure this in hertz. Pitch, on the other hand, is a perceptual experience. It's how humans perceive the highness or lowness of a sound, which is primarily determined by the sound's frequency. Let me share, this would be a sine wave. Now the sine wave, this would be a lower frequency sine wave. So this is where the sine wave goes up and down. And remember, it's measured in oscillations or vibrations per second, which equals 1 hertz, or hertz rather. So if we looked at middle C oscillates at 261.63 times per second. So whether it's a piano or your voice or part of your air conditioner, that frequency is 261 times per second. Now, the lower we go, the slower that vibration. So let's go down to A. This is in the second octave. Oscillates at 110 hertz, or 110 oscillations per second. Very low. And if we double that, that's 220. And of course, A440, the measure by which instruments are tuned, is 440 times per second. So you can see prospectively that the higher we sing, the faster the oscillation of the vocal folds, and the smaller they get, meaning it's easier to lose control. if that's making sense. Frequency refers to the rate at which the sound wave oscillates or vibrates. So we measure pitch. We use the piano as a measuring stick to measure that oscillation rate. Higher frequency means the wave repeats more quickly, resulting in more oscillations per second. So we know it's measured in hertz, fancy scientific name for that vibration rate. So at A440, 440 hertz. This has to be clear because this will explain why sometimes we have challenges with pitch and pitch accuracy as it pertains to the voice. A sound wave, for example, with the frequency of, say, 880 hertz, which would be A5, is perceived as a higher pitch than a sound wave with the frequency of 440, right? So that's clear. However, the human perception of pitch can be influenced by other factors like the sound's timbre and the presence of other sounds. We've all been listening to a singer thinking, wow, that singer's singing really high, and then you go to find the note and you go, oh, it wasn't really that high, it was the singer's timbre. We all know that the note that you sing, for example, in A440, this is the note we're singing, but attached to that are what's called harmonics. And harmonics are other notes that are related to the fundamental pitch we are singing. And sometimes with the singer's voice, they have characteristics that make it sound a little thinner and perhaps a little higher, giving the illusion of that note being higher than it actually is. So learning to sing is basically ear training, and we're learning to create frequencies with our voice, which means we're manipulating the vocal folds, we're manipulating the vowel, the vocal cord closure, all the concentrations to create that pitch as accurately as possible. So humans can hear frequencies roughly between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Now 20,000 hertz is extremely high, and that's where, the dog's tilting its head, and things are, for some, we can't even hear that high. As a matter of fact, the older you get, you tend to lose a little bit of that upper register. What? And that happens. So higher frequencies generally correspond to higher perceived pitches, and lower frequencies correspond to lower pitches. In music, pitches are often referred to by letter names. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or by their frequency in hertz. And many of you that work with me know on my very piano, I have a label that actually labels each and every note of the piano register with the frequency that each pitch oscillates at. So I can reference where we are, and then it helps me ascertain why we have challenges in the transition or with higher register, etc. And it also helps me when I'm working on a song in my DAW, when I'm recording, and I have, say, an acoustic guitar and a vocal and a piano, and they're all fighting for supremacy in an area of the register. And I can go in and find the note with the piano, and I can go, okay, well, that's the same frequency that's happening here in the vocal. And so I can go into my EQ, and I can find that exact pitch, and I can notch it out a couple of decibels, which cleans up my mix. And we use the piano as the measuring stick, and typically a piano is tuned universally to A440, 440 hertz, right there. And this is the reference pitch for tuning instruments. It should be the reference pitch for tuning your voice. So when I hear sometimes people say to me, well, I've been practicing and I've just been doing it a cappella, I've got it, it's all there. But then when we go to the piano, we realize, wait a minute, you're not grabbing those notes, you're not finding the correct pitch. So it's the equivalent to buying a guitar and it's in tune. You got it from the store, it's in tune, but when you go to play to the record or to the piano, it's out of tune. So it's in tune, say, lower or higher than the fundamental frequencies of the piano. So to paraphrase, pitch is the frequency at which sound vibrates, and we must be in tune to the piano. So whenever you exercise your voice, use the scales, use a piano. So that the tuning of your voice that you're now starting to make more accurate is more likely going to create habits or muscle memory that keep you in tune. When we say someone is singing off pitch, it simply means the frequency of the sound they're producing doesn't match the fundamental frequency of the note they're trying to sing. Now here's where it gets interesting. As singers, we don't just hear pitch, we feel it. It's called sympathetic resonance, a physical sensation in the body that gives us feedback on whether we're in the right zone. Now, I know there's a lot of instructors that teach what's called the mask, where you can actually feel the vibrations in your face. And it is true, there are and can be vibrations in your face and in your chest, which will let you know what part of your register you're in. So typically in chest voice, we're using what's called the thyroarytenoid muscle, or TA, which means chest voice muscle. So, and the vocal cords are longer and thicker, more vibrating mass is being used, and we feel it in chest voice. That's why when you put your hand on your chest and you go, you feel that vibration. It's sympathetic. You're not actually singing from your chest, but this is the part of the body that's resonating to let you know, I'm in chest voice, right? The higher we sing, the more those vocal cords are going to converge, get smaller, more natural tension, and now the cricothyroid muscle is going to be enabled. We call it the CT, which means now as the vocal cords stretch, we have another muscle group that takes over to give us those higher pitches. And we don't, or we may no longer feel it in chest voice. You may or may not feel it in head voice or up in your head, but you will no longer feel it in chest voice. And so you can actually feel where your voice is in the register. And this helps you to navigate when you're finally getting the right pitch. You go, there it is, right. And you can start to feel and hear and tune all your concentrations to make this work for you. Why am I singing off key? Singing off pitch doesn't mean you're tone deaf. In fact, very few people are actually, clinically tone deaf. What's really happening is that one or more of your 4 vocal concentrations is uncoordinated. It means there's a lack of balance in the tools that you have at your disposal to sing in tune correctly and consistently. And of course, we'll touch on them. Breath energy. Are you contributing to the sound? Are you contributing to the tone with your breath? Chord closure, vocal cord closure. Are the vocal cords making a clean connection? Because if they're not, this can contribute to the pitch going sideways. So we must have cord closure and appropriate breath flow to make sure the vocal cords are opening and closing in a balanced fashion, creating a connected tone. And then we have what's called resonance. Are you placing the sound effectively? And we can use that by changing the tilt of our larynx. We can go slightly dopey, which tends to lower the resonance, and you can feel it. Or we can maybe raise the larynx, which tends to raise it a little bit higher. So we can use these tools to help us affect how we're finding pitch. Pitch accuracy. Are your ear and body in sync? Is this the note? Is that the note I'm finding? Is that the note I'm singing? Or am I doing and it's just not quite there? This can happen To everyone, it's a certain part of your register. So because as humans we speak in chest voice, we live in chest voice, it seems easier to sing lower. It requires less vocal cord coordination, if you will. We're using most of the vibrating mass. It's easier. And then as we approach the transition where we're changing those muscle groups and we're learning to hand off and or share those muscle groups in the transition area, then the concentration is going to change again. And then when we're completely head voice dominant, it's a completely different concentration and a coordination, if you will. So if pitch is a problem in every part of your voice, your overall coordination is off. But if it's only a challenge in certain parts of your voice, like in your higher or lower registers, then it is likely that specific part of your vocal system that are out of balance. And given the 4 concentrations, breath flow, vocal cord closure, tilt of your larynx, and vowel shapes, it's either one or a combination of all of those concentrations that are going to affect specifically how you find, keep, and habituate accurate pitch. What can we do to help us train accurate pitch? Well, one of the best tools we have for finding and keeping pitch is, of course, a tuned piano. Let me just show you my piano. Many of you have seen. Okay, so I have it labeled here. This, you can see, is the transition area right down here for a bass. So it's somewhere around E flat to G. And then for the baritone, A flat to C, somewhere around there. The tenors and altos, E flat 4 to around G. You notice the patterns repeating. And then for sopranos, we're up here. So this is the transition area, meaning for a soprano, anything below this A flat is going to be chest voice dominant, and anything above C, give or take a semitone or two, is going to be head voice dominant. So this is why we find a lot of our challenges in the transition, because of that coordination that we have to develop. Okay, so for singers, the piano is used as a measuring device. Pianos are tuned universally. The piano is your pitch ruler. It doesn't lie. It's always in tune, always at A440. And it helps give your brain and your body something to aim for. Now, one of the ways, if you're finding you're going through exercises and you go, gosh, I only got a few notes of that scale, and the harder you try, the farther you slide scenario, what I always suggest doing is just find a piano, play one note, repeat that note. I like to use ugly sometimes, because maybe the coordination that is out of balance is the vocal cord closure. So if we bring the tongue out, stabilizes the larynx, we can be a little bit more aggressive on a staccato tone. Finding pitch easily, albeit ugly. Then you can move a semitone up or down. Then try sustaining it. And you'll find your notes. It's painstaking sometimes, but it truly works. And it's what it's doing is every time you repeat the note correctly, you're wrapping myelin around that syntax, that neuron path from the brain that says this is where the parts of my body I use to make this noise have to be and have to come together to coordinate making that noise. Then you can reference it by your ear, what you hear and what you feel. So you've got the sympathetic, you've got the auditory, you've got the actual act of singing, and then you can record yourself. And then you try to match it to the piano. Then you can sustain it, move up a note, down a note, etc., etc. And this is really what we do to help us find the pitch. Once it becomes easier, then you can start to do scales, right? La, 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 la. Now you're finding each and every note. You can say them in a more staccato stance, and you can link them together in a legato stance we call singing. Like that. So you're training your ear to hear and your body to feel. You can use the C major scale as your baseline. And in a C major scale, 261.63 all the way to 523.25 hertz. So each note oscillates at a different frequency. Not that that really matters, because as singers, we don't really see what we're doing anyways. We feel it and we hear it. So as long as each and every one of those notes is in tune to the piano, the sound that comes out of your mouth is tuned to the piano, you're singing. You're in tune. And by repeating these exercises, you'll give yourself the ability to habituate and make it easier to find notes, because every time you repeat it, you are securing that muscle memory. So you can practice singing these with the piano until your voice locks in with the tone. That sensation, the lock, is your body's pitch calibration turning on. So when you lock it in and you can find the notes, you've locked it in, right? Now, of course, within the app, there are exercises everywhere, and half the battle, of course, is being able to find and keep the pitch within the exercise. So the deep practice module is a wonderful place to start with that. And I think what I'll do right now, I'll share my screen. So in the app, if you go down to your exercise toolbox for male and female, you've got your exercise toolbox, which is all of the scales that we use to build and balance the voice. You can access them here. And then I've recently added major scales, where you can walk through very slowly and confidently, note by note, every note of the major scale. You're locking in your body's pitch calibration, and you're turning that on. And then you can speed it up as need be when you feel like it's no longer a challenge, and that'll give you the freedom to make more of a stylized sound, which becomes very useful when you take exercise into song. So you really, really need this. So now, exercise to improve pitch, this is where the fun begins to happen. These are designed to habituate accurate pitch. There's certain exercises that you can use that will help you develop your pitch. And one of them is what I call the 1-5-1. So in a major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do, re, mi, fa, so, 1, 5, we find the pitch. 1, 5, 5, 1. Again, staccato sounds are going to be really effective in finding the pitch accuracy at the vocal cord level, at the source where the sound comes from. It takes breath and vocal cord to make noise. And remember, the higher the frequency of the pitch you're singing, probably the less room for, the more accurate you have to be. There's less room for being lax in that accuracy. So the lower you sing, probably the easier it is. So somewhere in chest voice for your voice type will help you develop the right approach. So on a 1-5, if you went bup 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 bup, so that's going to be very effective. You could do 1, 2, 3, bup 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 bup, just like the pa band. Bop, 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 bop. You can start to find those notes. And then, of course, the octave. Bop, 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 bop. And that simple exercise repeated, for 5 minutes, you can move around the scale as high as you can take it and as low as you can go without strain or disconnect. And then you're going to make that habit secure, which is every singer's goal, right? And then you'll find, because you're using a piano, when you go to sing songs, most every song in the world is tuned to A440. You'll find the notes that you can use. This will help you develop your range, and it'll also let you know the limitations of your range at where you are right now in your vocal development. So as you move up the scale, you can move up a half step. So from here, you'd go to F sharp, right? And then G, and so on and so on. And move up and down the scale. And of course, in the deep practice exercises in the app, we go that slow so you can develop the habit, the muscle memory. This trains you to hit the target notes with accuracy and repeatability. Now, you can use another exercise. We could use the opposite of we could just do a descending 5-1-1. Bop, 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 bop. Bop, 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 bop. So you hear the note, you find the note, you repeat the note, you move on, right? And eventually it'll become very easy. Now, I've only a couple of times in my teaching career have I come across a singer who had perfect pitch. And they couldn't sing perfect pitch, but they could hear perfect pitch. I could play any note on the piano and they would tell me what it was. We know A flat 4, B2. They would be able to hear that. And that's really great if you have that skill. Most of us have to work for it, right? We really have to develop that, and it's ongoing. And if you can't do the simplest of vocal exercises, it's going to be a very big challenge, learning to do riff and run or applying style to your song. So eventually you'll focus on sustaining each note and staying locked in with the piano or backing track. And then we can do what's called sliding intervals. So once we get to the point where in a staccato stance we're able to repeat the notes, then we want to start linking them together. Now, if you imagine your vocal cords is a big elastic band, and in chest voice, again, we're using the bong bong. It's big, and as we sing higher, basically it stretches. When we're going from a 1-5 scenario, ba ba, I've gone from a large vocal cord system to smaller vocal cord system. Now, when we slide that or glide from one note to the next gently, we can sustain the note. And we learn to just change the pitch gradually, changing the size and shape of the chords. The breath flow won't change too much when the notes are this close together, but we can learn to sustain that. And if you find the pitch goes sideways when you're sustaining notes, go back to staccato and keep increasing your ability to find and keep that pitch, and eventually glide from one note to the next. And the less when you're gliding, if you don't sense that the note is moving, if your ear it's nice and smooth, it's not then you're going to be sharing the resistance value of the vocal cords closing and the breath flow that makes it smooth. And the smoother it is, the better. And so when we work on this, or we work on a major scale, when we go and we find each and every one of those notes, which is just an octave, but each and every note in between gives us that really smooth glissandos and glides, and so we can now manipulate the voice, finding all those notes without really stopping on those notes, but they're there. You can hear them if you slow it down. So focusing on hearing and feeling the pitch land, especially when the interval jumps. It's important. Now, here's a tip. If your pitch drifts as the scale moves up or down, you've likely hit your comfort zone ceiling, which means you're in a place in the vocal register that you're not familiar with, and it's hit and miss. When we scream or yell, it's like hey, we're not concerned about the pitch or the note that we're trying to achieve. In song, we are. So if it starts to drift as you go up and down, up or down, then you know that something is out of balance and it's time to back off, maybe go lower and come back to it. And then we can, the time to increase that zone by repeating exercises gently above or below your sweet spot. The reason why we train our voice is so that eventually we can take the process of exercise and put it into song. And again, if we're exercising in tune to a tuned piano, it's going to be easy. But what really matters is how you use pitch in a song. Let's say you're learning a phrase from a ballad or a riff-heavy tune. You would start by breaking the line down into small pitch chunks. And we covered this in a previous webinar on riff and run and how we find the notes, how we link them together, and then how we're able to stylize them emotionally. So if you want to get more into that, go visit that particular webinar on riff and run and breaking that down. It will be very effective. Again, playing the notes on the piano is your friend when you use it as a guide while you're building your pitch accuracy, your ability to hear and replicate noise. Sing along until you hear and feel the match, and then move along semitone by semitone. And, when you think of songs like this, the Star-Spangled Banner, for example. If you look at it, we're in the key of C here. It's 5, 3, 1, 3, 5, 8, or the octave 1. Oh, say, can you see? So you have to learn all those notes in a scale anyways. So if you're well versed in exercising a 1 octave scale, the intro line to Star Spangled Banner might be pretty easy for you, right? Mind you, and this is a note, the Star Spangled Banner is one of the most difficult songs to sing. It needs extensive range, control, and you have to be able to adapt all of these things. So just like any song you would sing, this one would probably need to be worked as well. And in previous webinars, I also demonstrated, like in the riff and run and whatnot, how singers like Chris Stapleton, how he stylized Tennessee Whiskey, how we can break that down. There's subtle pitch slides, there's jumps, there's maneuvers. It's basically controlled exercise. And so if your goal is to sing like such a singer, like let's say Teddy Swims, one of my new favorite singers, great example of mixed pitch agility and precision. So you listen to your favorite singers and you emulate what they're doing, and if you can figure out what key they're singing in, you can then go and learn the exercises in that key, and you might find that particular key isn't suited for your voice type. You may have to lower it, you may have to raise it to avoid common challenges. Some common pitch mistakes and fixes. You're either born with pitch or you're not born with pitch. That is false. Pitch accuracy is learned. And pitch accuracy, when you hear a singer that has tremendous pitch accuracy, that means they are a very disciplined singer. They exercise. They know their scales. They know the limitations of their vocal register. It's pitch accuracy is trainable. True. That is true. Pitch is only about your ears, and that is another myth. The reality is it's as much about your body awareness as it is your ear training. For singers, the instrument is the body, and the more care you take of your body, the more you are aware of what you're doing as an exerciser. For example, training to a piano or to scales tuned to a piano, the more you'll be aware of what's happening when you find the correct pitch. Myth number 3, more air equals better pitch. That is completely false. And we see this time and again, a singer trying to get to higher notes, and they're really going to belt it out, and they put so much breath into the system that those little tiny vocal cords just get blown apart, and we not only lose the pitch, we lose the connection of the vocal folds. So the reality of this is too much air can actually make you sing flat. So the key here, ladies and gentlemen, is balance. We must balance air and muscle, breath flow and vocal fold closure. We must balance the position of the larynx wherever we are in our register to assist in getting a balanced vowel shape or formant for which the sound to flow through. And I've said this time and again as well. Singing is source, where the sound comes from, filter, the vowels, source, filter, interaction. So we have to learn to balance. Balance your exercise. Balance how you hear. Balance how you sustain. Balance how you glide. Balance how you replicate songs. It's all about balance. A simple pitch practice plan, if we were to provide a prescription for this, 5 minutes of piano matching, C major scale. 5 minutes. Do this for 5 minutes. Find each and every note. If you want to use solfege, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. Or if you want to use numbers, you want to use bop, gi, whatever sound you want to make, balance it. And if you're limited to a 5-tone scale, start there. Then you can do 5 minutes of the 1-5-5-1, which again sounds like this. So the 1-5-5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 5, 5, 1. Move up. 1, 5, 5, 1. You could use bop, 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 bop. You could use wee, 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 wee. And then you could also do the 5, 1, 1. Bop, bop, bop. Bop, bop, bop. And simple exercise. Somewhat boring, actually, but very effective. So you could repeat that. 5 minutes of slide and sustain. 1, 3, 1, 1, 5, 1. So then you would go 1, 3. You could go slide, sustain, slide. 5. You could speed it up. That's a good one. You could do 5 minutes and sing with song. Sing with a phrase. You could use a pitch heavy line, so where the notes are all over the place. You could use a simple song. You could use a nursery rhyme. You can use whatever you want. And then if you repeat this daily for 2 weeks, and you go into deep practice and you find yourself finding all the notes of the scale a little bit easier and a little bit more effective, you will be happy. You will be effective. You will be finding pitch and pitch accuracy. You will hear a difference. You can and you should be using the tools in the app to assist you in developing correct, consistent pitch. Deep practice module, one of the most effective for finding pitch. Any exercise in your vocal toolbox as well, providing you're doing them correctly, achieving accurate pitch, and you do not move along until you do find accurate pitch. So the less you cheat, the faster, believe it or not, you will find accurate pitch. The faster you find accurate pitch, the easier it'll be to get into song. The more song you get into, the bigger your repertoire is, the more gigs you get, the happier your vocal coach is. All of these things apply. Pitch isn't perfection, it's connection and coordination. It's you matching vibration with intention. When your body and your brain line up and the note that you're singing becomes effortless, like learning dance moves step by step through correct repetition. So you have to start slow and learn the little steps, the maneuvers. In this case, it's the sound coming out of your mouth. And then you go to practice and to perfect your pitch, and then it goes into song. So there we have it. Here's a question. When I switch to an ah sound, it seems to naturally change my resonance, your placement, more forward to what we were calling the mask area you spoke of. How does that translate in relation to the other vowels that don't feel, that feel, vowels that don't naturally, okay, I get what you're saying, they don't feel that natural, end up in the mask area. So basically, ah is a great vowel because it's wide. It's the widest shape we can shape. And when we sing through that ah sound, it's driving tone to chest voice. However, with an ah, we can bring the tongue forward, which helps us slightly raise the larynx, which will secure the position of the vocal folds so that it won't flip for one, and we can maintain connection. So when we get that it's easier to touch notes higher. Right now, if I did that on an ooh, it'd be kind of difficult. And it's not going to feel the same. So for an ooh shape, we might actually lower the larynx. So you understand now that this was a really good point that was just brought up about, why, the ah vowel changes the resonance. Well, actually, every vowel is going to change the resonance. And this is why once we learn to balance vocal cord closure with breath flow, and maybe we're using the larynx to slightly assist in the balance of the oscillation of the vocal folds, that 99% of your challenges are going to be in the vowel, the shape that you sing through. Let's share that screen. Okay, so we're talking about vowels now, and why do vowels seem to affect the resonance, which in turn could affect your pitch. So if you notice, the way the vowel chart is set up, the narrowest sound we can shape is ooh. Woo! Easily drives tone and resonance to head voice, which means higher notes, which means faster oscillation of frequency, more hertz, higher pitch. So, woo! Easy. The E right next door to it is part of the E tree, the second narrowest vowel we can shape. Wee! So you see how that makes it easy. Now when we come down to the bottom and we have ah, which is the widest vowel shape you can shape, ah, it doesn't like to go upstairs. Ah, something's going to happen until we learn to balance. So next door, the ah vowel, which is part of the oo tree, ah, really likes it in chest voice. So when we're exercising, we're looking for pitch correction. Really strong vowels to use are what I call neutral vowels. I like bit, bi, and like book, could, b, because these vowels, and then easy to take into head voice. They're neutral. They don't mind it in chest or head voice positions. So then using a neutral vowel is beneficial in walking from chest voice through the transition into head voice, perfecting your pitch. Really good, really good. If you've liked what you've seen today, please like, share, and subscribe, as it means a lot to me. And go through your exercises as slowly as possible to make sure that you're finding and keeping accurate pitch. So there you have it. Building pitch is building and balancing the voice. Everything we do in exercise is about using the correct pitch, so finding correct pitch is paramount. If you need help, come and find me. Go into the chat, send me a message, send me a small video of what's not happening with your voice, and I'll point you in a direction. I'll give you a prescription of exercises that will help. Thanks for tuning in. I wish you all the best. Sing for yourself.